If I told you this essay is about a person that was really close to a sick mother, was a frustrated artist, born into an economically troubled place, that learned to hate a group of people typically known for their prosperity, who would you guess this person is? Sounds familiar to you? Despite these curious parallels, this essay is actually about Joker, the 2019 Todd Phillips masterpiece. And given that Folie à Deux is going to be released this year, I decided to launch this video laying down some unique perspectives that I haven't seen being discussed or analyzed, namely, how a fragile outlook on human nature is malicious and related to a fetishization of victimhood, leaving no space for the person to learn, grow, and evolve, which sows the seeds of destructive behavior. I'll demonstrate how Joker is a depiction of the motherly relationship going astray, and how the Oedipal type of bond is what brings destruction about in the movie, not the capitalist society per se, and how the film is such a masterpiece that it tricks us into seeing the world through Arthur Fleck's eyes, allowing us to share his twisted view. Watching Joker provides a great opportunity to dive deep into our psyche and study some of its mischievous darker aspects, enabling us to enhance our self-awareness and remove unnecessary obstacles to our life. Welcome to Psychology Power Performance. My name is João Maia, and let me guide you through this exploration. In the social or collective layer of analysis, the city is accumulating garbage due to a strike. Even though we don't know the reason behind it, the equivalent weight of 22 blue whales of garbage are accumulating each day on the streets, giving us the impression that the strike is probably running for far too long. Another echo of the passivity theme applied to the collective also appears in the beginning. The first act of gratuitous violence against Arthur Fleck is perpetrated by a small gang of teens that clearly display enjoyment hurting Arthur just for its own sake. He repeatedly asks for help to stop the delinquents while running after them, but nobody helps him. In a closer, more intimate layer, Penny's relationship with Arthur is a passive one, in the sense that she renders dependent upon the care provided by him. Penny also seems to have her own life on hold, by remaining stuck in the delirious expectation that Thomas Wayne owes her something and is going to rescue her and Arthur, handing them a better life. She remains literally and symbolically seated in almost every scene where she appears, just waiting for something that will never come. One of the few instances that we can see Penny standing is not by her own volition, but because Arthur lifts her out of her chair and starts dancing with her. At that moment, Penny points out that Arthur smells of cologne, sounding disappointed and leaving the room, subtly punishing him for the possibility of having a girlfriend. So, due to this Oedipal dynamic, Arthur is only allowed to live in a world of fantasy, remaining unable to truly connect and engage with outside world reality. At the same time, Arthur seems to choose to remain passive, not to disturb the status quo of his relationship with his mother. While taking care of Penny can be perceived as a virtuous, loving act, actually, it also seems to hide Arthur's cowardice and difficulty to emancipate and trail his own path. He craves attention from others while not being able to pay attention to himself or attend to his own suffering in life. Just because his neighbor Sophie interacts briefly with him in the elevator, he instantly develops an obsession over her and starts stalking her, somewhat paralleling Penny's obsession over Wayne. Both Penny and Arthur outsource the control of their own lives. So Gotham City streets parallel Arthur's inner world, with psychological rubbish piling up, festering the chaos and making Arthur a walking, psychotic ticking bomb, just like mayhem is simultaneously brewing in Gotham's heart. Even though Arthur is active and has a job, deep down he refuses responsibility to change his own life and the way he feels. He's also expecting the world to deliver that to him, just like a child, awaiting to be fed, refusing to handle his own inner life. Arthur rejects growing up, and this psychological immaturity and lack of sophistication is also hinted by the fact that he is actually successful and able to entertain children with his clown acts, but completely maladjusted in the comedy world of adults.
Is it just me, or is it getting crazier out there?
Even though his statement is accurate, by over-identifying with the victim role, he centers his issues on external factors, neglecting the knots he needs to untie within himself. The social worker, while not dismissing the turmoil going on in the streets, always tries to channel the conversation toward how Arthur can work on himself. But her efforts are in vain because he prefers the safety of being locked up in an hospital, not even being able to reflect on why he had to be hospitalized in the first place, attributing it to some sort of random chance, dismissing any role he may have had in that. Then, he asks for a higher dose of medication, even though it seems he's already over-medicated, revealing his dependence towards it, and showing once more that he perceives that solutions for his inner problems must always come from the outside, while he remains passive and someone takes care of him. Besides, his medication keeps him somewhat numb, never being able to metabolize his negative emotions and darker aspects of his personality. Later on, Arthur says,
You don't listen, do you?
assuming that she is not supportive of him, even though she seems to be the most supportive and closest character to Arthur in the whole movie. This may sound odd, but bear with me. The sign of the depth of their relationship is that the social worker is one of the few people to whom Arthur is able to display his pent-up resentment, even allowing himself to be slightly rude to her, while being unable to assert himself in situations where he really should. For example, when his boss scolds him unfairly for losing the sign. Deep down, Arthur doesn't want to take into his own hands the change he needs, so he scorns the social worker's efforts to encourage him to get back upon his own feet. That's why he presents a cynical demeanor towards her help. Unlike Arthur's mother, the social worker doesn't really smile, and even if she can strike us at first glance as an austere, cold character, she embodies much more the role of an encouraging, positive mother that aims at fostering the independence of Arthur than the smiley Penny that actually hinders his autonomy through a chronic, codependent dynamic. Underneath his clothes, Arthur is wounded, but still he makes great efforts to fit into the clown's shoes. But being a clown and a stand-up comedian doesn't seem to be suited for him. A true comedian exposes reality and its ridicules. Conversely, Arthur hides it and isn't able to bear it. Arthur is too vain to accept he is flawed. When confronted with his own failures, he stubbornly refuses to face reality and learn, not tolerating making a fool out of himself. Something that is inescapable during the learning process. And when he fails publicly, having others laugh at him, he becomes too bitter, seeing them laughing as the issue, while him being lousy at comedy doesn't even come into the equation. For Arthur, the comic is only a rigid persona, promoted in its inception by Penny's expectations and obediently adopted by him. She nicknames him as Happy, which sounds perverse in its superficial attempt to smother Arthur's inner desperation, just like sweeping dirt under the rug, which perpetuates the way he experiences life.
It's so hard to start being happy all the time.
The insistence on the unidimensionality of happiness, ignoring the dirty, shadowy feelings that also need to be dealt with, sows the seeds of destruction. This persona has no connection with his inner world, especially with his shadow. It is only a rigid, fake mask which promotes a state of dissociation or inner disconnection to be slowly cracking him down underneath. The only relation of Arthur's persona to his deeper world is in their corresponding ever-growing distance, like a balloon rising to the sky in relation to the ground until it bursts. The more he swallows his aggression and negative feelings, the more energy he has to apply into faking everything's well on the outside, making his behavior more and more awkward, while his shadow steadily grows. His spontaneous laughter that erupts when he feels distressed is inappropriate and uncontrollable, while his fake laughter is also out of sync from what's really funny, making it awkward as well. At the comedy club, we can also see Arthur taking notes on how to be funny, but these notes are just patterns of behavior. They are also disconnected from his true inner contents and emotional life, and by that fact won't bring Arthur the results he seeks. It's all pure emulation and a poor acting performance. Arthur either caves into his emotions or acts with no resonance from what he feels, disconnected from his inner affection. But it's the indulgence of emotions that underpins Arthur's fantasies towards Thomas Wayne and Murray Franklin as parental figures, and Sophie as his girlfriend. These fantasies are a kind of self-soothing strategy, just like masturbation can be. And even though it brings with it a feeling of relief, it also comes with the cost of disconnecting oneself from reality, and so promoting feelings of guilt and weakness. As the plot unfolds, we can see how these fantasies are associated with a progressive dismemberment of Arthur's psyche, as it becomes weaker and weaker until the point of a full-on rupture. Even laughter, which should spring from a joyful place by the fact of being uncontrollable, becomes a source of suffering for Fleck, sometimes to the point of choking. Other people also get off-putted by it, cringing at the presence of this behavior, exponentiating his sense of loneliness by shunning people away, making him resort back to his self-soothing fantasies, creating a snowball effect of disconnection from outside reality. During the train scene, Arthur presents a card that explains his uncontrollable laughter condition. This seems to be a negative version of a business card, which is commonly used to strike a positive impression. This may symbolize how Fleck presents himself, as a powerless, victimized individual. If you watch the movie, try to recall people that were good to Arthur. Probably you will have some difficulty thinking of any, except of Gary. We never directly see his good deeds, but while slaughtering Randall at his apartment, Arthur spares Gary, telling that he was the only one that was ever nice to him. The chance that you recall Gary as being the only person that treated Arthur well has probably a lot more to do with the brutality of the scene itself, combined with the contrasting act of Arthur letting Gary go. However, acts of compassion and support towards Fleck are sprinkled throughout the movie, but we as humans tend to automatically attribute a higher salience to negative events. So, by empathizing with Arthur, his way of perceiving his interactions with others almost makes him and us blind to the people that were good to him, tilting our attention towards a biased focus on victimhood. The movie is such a masterpiece that the sympathy we are led to feel for Fleck makes us identify him utmostly as a victim, just like he identifies himself as one. It's this perceived unidimensional role as a victim that makes it so easy for him to act murderously, since he is supposedly defending himself, while the spectator remains compassionate towards him and even cheerful for the atrocities he commits. After all, the line between victim and perpetrator can be quite thin. In the beginning of the movie, Arthur being beaten down in an alley evokes in the viewer a deep sense of compassion and pity. Near the end, in an alley as well, little Bruce Wayne witnesses his parents being senselessly murdered. And even though this act is much more violent and abominable, resulting in two people being killed in front of an innocent child, contrastingly, it doesn't strike the viewer with the same intensity and pity that watching Arthur being beaten down evokes. By the end of the movie, we the spectators become way worse than the juvenile gang we so much despise in the beginning. Joker makes us experience the dark side of empathy and how so easily we become primed for free violence, framing it as a virtuous compassion. By identifying ourselves with Arthur, the viewer becomes part of the mob, and vicariously enjoys the very acts of savagery against the world and higher status people, perpetrated and promoted by the Joker. And even though the Joker clearly states he's not political and doesn't care about that, he's still exalted as a symbol of the revolt of the so-called oppressed against the oppressors, creating an illusory line between the good guys and the bad guys, based upon if one belongs to the lower status or higher status group correspondingly. Allowing ourselves to be guided just by our feelings can be extremely dangerous for both ourselves and others, especially if we rationalize our indulgences, framing them with an ideology that tricks us into perceiving ourselves as righteous agents. Growing up with no father around, Arthur fantasizes with prominent figures as fathers, accepting him as a son. If Penny encapsulates him in a fantasy bubble, The father figures that he wishes to have burst that bubble and make the truth about himself bare to be seen. Thomas Wayne is the one who tells Fleck the harsh truth about him being Penny's adoptive son, while Murray, by roasting him on his show, exposes Arthur for not being funny at all, which is also true. Even though it hurts, Wayne allows Arthur to finally have some sort of reality-based connection with his personal history as a child. And even though he's so easily perceived as a prick by the viewer, Wayne is running for mayor and announces that he intends to help lift people out of poverty. He doesn't seem to neglect that issue and appears to be the only person trying to handle the city's chaos, which Arthur so much complains about. Regarding Murray, we can see him roasting his own younger son, referring to him as the not-so-bright one, while Arthur laughs at it. But when the roast is on him, Arthur doesn't find that funny at all. Just like us, the audience of the movie, that perceive it at minimum distasteful, or even that Murray is an awful person. When later on Arthur strikes the ultimate cancel culture move and kills Murray, the viewer perceives that to be somewhat deserved. But roasting appears to just be part of his style as a comedian, and when Murray meets Arthur backstage before the show, he seems to be genuinely welcoming of him, even dismissing the insistence of his assistant for Murray to be put in a pedestal by being treated too formally. On the contrary, Arthur demands people to perceive him as funny, even though he does not deserve such a spot. So, despite Murray being a successful comedian TV host, he doesn't want to be treated as above other people, which contrasts with Arthur's attitude of wishing others to glorify him, even without deserving that praise. By this token, which of the two actually fits more into the role of a tyrant? The scenes of truth delivery hit us hard, precisely because of Fleck's hyperbolic fantasies, in which he seeks these two men as father figures. The mismatch between Arthur's expectations and reality is the main ingredient to the gravity of his feelings of rejection, and how these scenes hit the viewer so negatively. If he hadn't gone overboard with these projective fantasies, they wouldn't have disappointed him so deeply. Arthur experiences just rough contact with reality that a father figure is more prone to give, but doesn't get the encouragement counterpart that a typical positive fatherly attitude can also provide, in order for the person to properly develop and acquire his own autonomy. And since he doesn't have a father around to give a counterbalance to the fusional intimacy which a mother is more inclined to have with a child, Arthur remains stuck into an infantile way of being, never really becoming able to properly take care of his own psyche or behave adaptively in the world. The only clear exception of such a figure with an encouraging attitude comes from a female character, which was explained before in respect to the social worker, to one that spends an entire life protected from exposure to factual truths and cased in a bubble of fantasy and deceit. When reality knocks on the door, it comes with the force of a tsunami, which can overwhelm the person who never built capacity to voluntarily face the concrete harshness of life. In the movie, truth and the reality are framed as diabolical, not because they are inherently so, but because Arthur's psyche is too brittle to face them. Besides, he refuses to try to change his fragile mentality, recklessly remaining a victim. In such a frame of mind, emotions are seen as absolute truths, and the person perceived as having a limited psychological budget for hardships. Within such a framework, the hits of life can only be so many, until the person collapses. Therefore, this fragile outlook on human nature despises any pushback or tension from life, because it is perceived as something that chips away that exact psychological budget. According to this notion of human nature, adversity can only be seen as evil and must be avoided at all costs. The pursuit of comfort and happiness reigns supreme. Paradoxically, the more we focus on it, the more fragile and miserable we become. Joker shows us how a seemingly virtuous, empathetic perspective on marginalized people can so easily turn into horrific, brutal behavior. By adopting a morality in which a victim identity becomes sacred and nothing else matters, an echo chamber is created, detaching the person from reality and paving the way for insanity. But the movie doesn't just make us watch this unfold. It makes us experience the process of becoming obsessed with victimhood by adopting Arthur's twisted view. We root for him, and we finally rejoice with his revenge on the world, downplaying the ripples of chaos he causes. Arthur's childish lack of self-reliance is manifested in his unquenchable thirst for external validation and acceptance. That's what ultimately leads him to accept Randall's poison gift, the gun. He could have refused, but doing so would also mean denying Randall's friendship, even though it's a fake one. And for Arthur, getting attention is paramount. His naivety and lack of wisdom are directly linked to his narcissistic need to be recognized. The gun boosts Arthur's downfall, even before killing the three guys, when he accidentally drops the gun in front of the children at the hospital, propelling him to be fired from the job he loves. Afterward, it's his endless craving for attention that makes him accept another poison gift, going to Murray Franklin's show as a guest. For sure, to be mocked, but he goes anyway. There's where the gun is used for the last time. Now to kill his idol, symbolizing that any possibility of aiming upward and saving himself is also obliterated by and for Fleck. From this point on, there's no going back from nihilism. Even though we may think that once he turns into the Joker, he finally becomes free, this is actually not true. Instead, he becomes possessed by his aggression and resentment, and so he lost all capacity for true freedom. By that time, he's the embodiment of the domination of the unconscious over the conscious self. If in the beginning he wasn't able to connect with his own inner world, having no dialogue with his unconscious, then the unconscious claims everything and overpowers Arthur's whole personality. During this scene, he even makes a reference to such a state of possession that was right around the corner for him.
They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys, that we won't werewolf and go wild.
And possession is definitely not integration. It is not true awareness, just like a werewolf does not remember what he has done during his transformation. It is just another form of slavery. After he starts killing, the line between what's real and what's not becomes really difficult to tell. If in the beginning the line was visible, now it becomes really blurred. Near the end we can see Arthur running away from the police towards the left side of the screen, contrasting with him running towards the right when chasing the kids at the beginning. And the Latin word for left is sinister, which over time among many cultures developed negative connotations, leading to its association with dark or evil forces. Arthur is now the sinister agent of chaos. From being underestimated and looked down upon, he turns the tables and becomes feared in the eyes of others, from prey to predator, from victim to oppressor. Now, senseless violence falls upon whoever. He becomes the very person that tormented him, allowing for the cycle of violence to perpetuate. He doesn't fix anything, but tears everything apart. While Joker shows us how a person can break down by not engaging properly with his own emotional world, it challenges the viewer to investigate himself, showing us how easily we can fall prey to defense mechanisms and patterns of self-deceit, hindering our life and the life of others. At some point we all have hidden our cowardice and lack of initiative behind the facade of good actions, displaying to others how we want to be perceived, and by doing so, also defending ourselves from facing our own inner flaws and difficulties. We've all felt that life owes us something, and cursed God for our sense of helplessness. How many times have we drifted away from reality because we indulged our daydreams too much? Watching Joker is an opportunity for us to remind ourselves that if we don't face our inner darkness, it can devour us and wreak havoc in the world. If we don't make an effort to connect with our own shadow, it's almost certain that we'll project it onto others and see them as demons that deserve to be slaughtered. Development occurs not when we damage others, but when we correct what's wrong inside. And for that to take place, challenges need to be welcomed, be it from within, from our unconscious, from other people, or from life itself. But if we never accept to be challenged, we'll remain fragile and deteriorate. So, we better start digging. If you found this video insightful, comment down below and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching and see you next time.